attending the series. So you're probably aware of some of this, house rules. So the first one, we do have sign language interpretation available. And for convenience, please pin the interpreter's video on your screen. We also have two languages for this dialogue. There's English and Swahili. So as we're waiting for our Swahili interpreter to join, you can select the German channel if you want to listen in Swahili. And then for the panelists, please keep your microphone mute unless you are speaking or unless you're called to speak, so that you do not interrupt the other, panelists or participants. Mm-hmm. Next slide, Usman. We do welcome your input and questions. Remember, this is a dialogue. We are not imposing, or we are not trying to drive an agenda. So any question that you have, any suggestions, please use the chat or Q&A section to post your question. We're going to try our best to answer all the questions. And when you're posting, please remember to include your name, your question, and who the question is directed at. For example, if you want Ms. Anne Gashoya to respond to you, just write your question and say this is directed to Ms. Anne Gashoya. The next slide, please. So today our moderator is Dr. Joyce Kinyanjui. So before I hand over to her, I'd just like to introduce her. Joyce is the Managing Director of Zizi Afrique, an organization which envisions an Africa in which each child has an equal opportunity to grow, learn, think, and thrive. Joyce previously worked as a program manager at Women Educational Researchers of Kenya work. She has over 25 years experience in the education sector, specifically in developing citizen-led assessments, early grade reading assessments, and early grade math assessment. So I'd like to welcome Joyce. Before I do that, for the benefit of those who joined a bit late, my name is Dion Oguna. I work at PAL Network and I coordinate policy dialogues. Joyce, karibu.
Good morning. Thank you for joining this policy dialogue. I'm really excited about what we'll be doing and discussing today. And to start us off, I want to just to talk about the reason why we are here today. The objective of this meeting is we want to look at three things. And our main topic, we want to discuss deboarding schools in Kenya. And you may wonder why we want to talk about it. It's because it was in the recommendation of the commission that had been set up on looking at implementation of CBC. So because it is a recommendation and we are stakeholders, we would want to discuss this among, to look into this topic of deboarding because it's a big one. And we'll seek to achieve three things. The first question is why deboarding? Why is it an issue? Why not leave things the way they are? And then the other question attached to that is why deboarding, and are we ready as a country to begin this discussion? And then the second objective for this meeting is we are not yet sure where the junior secondary will be, and that's not the purpose for this meeting, whether it will be in the current primary or it's moving to secondary. I think that is not what we want to delve in. Whatever it will be, junior secondary, whether in primary or secondary, is day schooling, because the recommendations targeted this section of the cycle of education, junior secondary, in a day school setting, how it will enhance access, equity, and quality. And then the third objective is the role of parents in character formation and inculcating values among learners in this school. So those are the three things that we have. And among us, we have a panel that I wish to introduce that will help us in discussing this topic. So the first person that we we have, and we are happy to have him, is Honorable William Sossion. He's a guest speaker. Honorable Sossion is a nominated member of parliament and a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Education. Until June 25th, he was the Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, where he took lead in championing the welfare and professional interest of all Kenyan teachers. Prior to joining the union, Sossion was a teacher at his alma mater, Tenwek High School in Bomet. And I may add, Mr. Sossion, I've been to Tenwek. Okay, then the second one will be joined by Ms. Anne Gashoya, who is also a guest speaker. Anne is a Deputy Director of Education at the Directorate of Policy Partnerships and East Africa Community Affairs in the Ministry of Education. She oversees the coordination of education reforms in the ministry and the National Education Sector Support Program, that is NESP development. Anne is a professional educational planner experienced in quality assurance and standards, policy design, formulation, and implementation. And next, now we'll be joined by panelists to help us in the discussion. We have Ms. Augusta Muthigani. Augusta Muthigani is the National Executive Secretary, Commission for Education and Religious Education, Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. Now she oversees over 8,000 Catholic private and sponsored public schools in Kenya. And this sort of gives you an indication why we really wanted to hear her. It's because 8,000 schools are many, and we know most of them are boarding schools. So it would be good to hear from also the private or sponsored schools by religious institution. Augusta has been involved in the education policy development, management, and implementation since 1990. I'm being made aware that Augusta is being represented by Margaret Nyaga. So I will ask her to introduce herself. She's representing Augusta. And next, so we have Dr. Lucy Wakiaga. She'll also be joining the panel. She's the Acting Director of Quality Assurance at Tangaza University College. She oversees the management and enhancement of Tangaza University College's quality and standards framework to ensure quality standards in academic programs and university administration. Previously, Lucy worked as an education consultant with a competency-based curriculum. She has over 20 years experience in local and international issues in education. She's also the PAL Network's Policy Dialogue Advisory Group Chairperson. Karibu Chair. So next, we have Mr. Nicholas Mayo. I'm really excited to have him because he represents the millions and millions of teachers, of parents. Nicholas is the chairperson of National Parents Association. Prior to joining the National Parents Association, he worked at Kenyatta International Convention Center, where he was a supervisor in the filing department. He later joined politics. His major interest is assisting the less fortunate and mentoring group leadership. Nicholas holds a bachelor's degree in county governance from Jomo Kenyatta University, Kenya. He also has leadership skills certificates from various forums. Thank you, Karibu, Mr. Mayo. So that is your panel. We have the guest speakers, and we want to first have a discussion, the guest speakers to set the stage for us, and then I'll invite the panelists for us to discuss the issue before we open it to the forum. So I will start with Honorable Sossion. I want you to set the stage for us on why deboarding is, on why deboarding is the way to go for Kenya. And you have about 7 minutes to try and set the stage for us. Karibu.
Thank you. Probably this is a very timely panel discussion after the release of Professor Fatuma Chege report a few months ago. We've not seen much activity, and this probably would be the first public engagement to discuss certain segments of that report. I would wish to go straight to the agenda of deboarding schools. Before we talk of deboarding, we must ask ourselves, why boarding? If we get down to the history of education of this country, it is instructive to know that the boarding schools, also known as residential schools, were established in Kenya in the 20th century by the colonial government in partnership with church missionaries, with a primary objective of civilizing or assimilating African children and youth into Euro-American culture and the European mannerisms. So really, in terms of cultural context, they were indoctrination centers. Principally, boarding schools were introduced in Kenya as part of wider and elaborate scheme to defeat, to eradicate, or to evade negative effects that came as a result of practicing cultures like female genital mutilations, child marriages, nomadism, pastoralism, early family responsibilities, and other related cultural barriers to access of education. And no wonder why, if you look at the early civil servants who took over government, of course, they were raised in missionary schools and taken through some of the best institutions in the world. The boarding schools were basically designed by the colonial government to introduce the African child to contemporary thinking and reasoning, modern healthcare, understand better nutrition, and how to value and nurture personal and community security. Cardinally, boarding schools were also used as a medium to introduce and entrench the African child into modern lifestyle through education. And Kenya, for over a century now, has met all the above objectives and targets which boarding schools were designed to address. Several years after independence, we no longer have much of cultural threats. We've entrenched gender equality, rights to education for every child. If you look at our constitution and various acts of parliament, laws, rules, and regulations have actually been realigned to ensure equity and access. Hence, there is no further need for boarding schools to be used to facilitate acquisition of education and civilization. This, therefore, is a clear manifestation that Kenya is ready to deboarding schools. And in fact, if anything, boarding schools are now a barrier to access and equity of education, because boarding schools currently come with a huge cost. And if you look at the fee structure of the various schools, the categorization of the institutions in this country into national, extra county, county, and sub-county schools. In fact, it is a fault at the moment to classify our schools. All our schools must be brought to the same bar. And this classification exists because of the various costs and in terms of boarding investment. And therefore, abolishing boarding schools will cap cases of, we've seen of late, the highest activity of arson. And this arson is only focusing on dormitories. And I think it is time we begin reflecting on the psychology of our children in terms of their comfort in schools, and even coupled with 100% transition. There has been undue congestion even of learners in school. But now, the very fundamental reform, the biggest reform agenda in this country is considering doing away with boarding schools for a number of reasons. We no longer need to indoctrinate our children through boarding. And I think what we need at the moment, if we revisit the very basics of child development in terms of psychology in some 3 domains. That is the psychomotor, the cognitive, and the affective domain. Very many Kenyan parents, through boarding, have started abdicating their children and abdicating their roles. So parental role in development of children at the very early stage has been diminished or removed completely through existence of boarding schools. Most of these boarding schools have even been expanded to primary level, which never used to be. And this reminds me, when Dr. Taita Towe was the Minister for Education, he resisted the establishment of any boarding primary. But if you look across the country, it is one of the biggest business frontier. And in fact, essentially, boarding schools are business frontiers meant to benefit the investors. And it's also allowing parents at an early age to dump their children in schools, in boarding schools as early as grade 4. And therefore, it is time we return the children back to the parents so that the parents can play their central role of sharing the child development aspects with the school on a 50-50 basis, at least before the age of 18. So the aspect of affective domain, affecting the learner, inculcating values away from cognitive, away from knowledge. There is a general belief by parents that in boarding schools, children have more time to learn and learn and learn, which really is a big mistake. And it's something that we really got to liberate our school system and ship it out so that children can commute at the very basic level from between schools and their homes, so that then families and parents, there can be a continuous interaction between the family setup and the school setup in upbringing of children. And in terms of major reforms of education and reduction of the cost, we really got to eliminate the boarding schools so that we bring equity and we let learners access quality education at their very home states. And this, of course, happens in the global north. The global north, most of the schools at the very basic level are actually learners commute from school. Look at the American system. Probably the first boarding of majority of the learners in the American system is at the university. So probably it is time if we talked of independence many years ago, we must truly liberate education and domicile learning access at the basic level to the very location of the very learners at their home states. And that is why we need to promote quality boarding, primary and secondary schools that would really, that would be accessed by all the learners everywhere in the country while commuting from their homes. That probably is the next investment frontier. That would be much easier to achieve. It is what Kenyans have done, and it is what many communities have done. And very likely, and more importantly, the role of parents is key. In the CBC, we would want to invest in rediscovering our national values. The national values cannot be achieved unless we let parents spend their time with their learners daily, at least before the age of 18. And this is where even the lower secondary automatically must be within the framework of the day system. And there would be nothing wrong if the lower secondary is domiciled in the current primary schools. I think we have to demystify and free our minds and allow quality learning to take place anywhere at any time. So we should open up access and ensure that learners can access education at least up to the junior secondary at within the day education system.
Okay, thank you, Mheshimiwa. I've also learned many things I didn't know about where the boarding schools and the achievement. Now, to pick up from where Honorable Sosion has reached, I want to request Anne Gashoya to kindly, as part of setting the stage, in discussing or sharing your thoughts on how you feel issues of access and quality and affordability can be tackled under deboarding. So Karibu Anne Gashoya, it's sort of a continuation from where Heshimiwa has stopped. Karibu Anne.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joyce and everyone else. Let me say that the deboarding is key because we find that based on the global trends in education and also the Constitution of Kenya, our Vision 2030, it talks about transforming the country into a knowledge-based economy through the education system. We are currently undergoing education reforms. Where we have reforms, that is the competency-based curriculum. Automatically that goes with the policy shift in the management of educational institutions. It's about the changes. It is about how we can enhance access, quality, transition, and the completion rate. We have a policy that is the 100% transition from one level to the other. If this is going indeed to be achieved, then deboarding is a reality because we find that we have large number of pupils who have been completing class 8 and even those who will be completing class 6. Evidence shows, like the statistical booklet shows, between grade 1 and even grade 6, the rate of dropout is very low. It is at 4%. But from class 7, by the time that now you go to class 8, it goes to 18.1%. That means learners drop out at that point because of also their ages. So when you maintain them in the day environment, these learners are having their parents, their communities, they are being nurtured within that environment, and they are able to continue learning without interruption. Learning, that is education, takes place both in schools and at home. If that is the case, and we all agree with the competency-based curriculum on nurturing every learner's potential, then home environment provides a suitable environment where the learners can learn the value-based education, issues of social responsibility, issues of social cohesion, and more so parental engagement and the community involvement in the learning process. When we confine them in other setup, like Honorable has said, indoctrinated, you also note the flexibility when these learners are at home. You realize there's sort of a schedule which is flexible for them, less stressful. That is why you find, let's say, in some boarding schools, poor unrest, increased in discipline, and the reason is because of what Honorable has just explained about the rigidity. So the flexibility, you provide these learners with some opportunity even to interact. It promotes the interaction, to interact with the society, to interact with the parents, to interact with even the other communities, and hence become a better place. When we look at the cost of infrastructure and even the cost of education, the cost of boarding schools is almost double that of the day scholars. So if we are to enhance opportunities to learners, we must therefore find affordable way of educating these children, which automatically is deboarding. It is day schools, so that they are able to participate in the learning process and also do them well. However, we find that even the current position, we have over 70% of secondary schools are actually day schools, while over 95% of primary schools are day schools. So Kenya, we are not also doing very badly compared in the global trend of boarding and day schooling, because you also notice and acknowledge there are the environmental factors that may also necessitate those boarding institutions to exist where applicable. For example, we have those who have been exposed to gender-based violence. We could also be having some orphans. We could also be having those who may not be able to reach school, because it also could mean accessing these schools at proximity of the learners. So we still find that those boarding situations may also apply, but not in the junior secondary, because even in the current situation, we still have the day schools. Let's talk about the supervision of the parents. Parents are very key in molding the learners, in supporting the learners, learning, monitoring their progress. So if we are making the policy shift on parental engagement, when we come to academic affairs, when we also come to their co-curricular activities, then it means we need to provide those opportunities where parents can monitor their learners, where parents can guide, where parents can give direction, where parents, and even within the COVID pandemic, we have heard parents and the community being very critical, even monitoring the health indicators of learners and ensuring that they stay home, they go to school without much problem. So that opportunity needs also to be provided in order to instill, to promote the holistic development and the behavior of the learners. So what I'm saying is, even for gender equity, those issues are quite good. And even with the pandemic, for example, we have found girls, some of the girls dropping out because of, indeed, with the day school, these girls will play the double role, and they'll even continue learning. And they'll continue parenting, they'll continue learning, and they'll continue being productive members of the society. And the 21st century, we just need individuals who are productive in the society and who can fit in the society. So both use will better be achieved in those circumstances. And we talk of the education at the nurturing the learner's potential as far as the competency-based curriculum is concerned. In the evening, these learners are able to interact with the other children. They're able to interact with the parents. You remember how a long time ago, people could even have literature from their parents because you are there with them. You know, literature, politics. You engage the children and they come to learn about governance, issue of governance and management. They learn within those home environments, within the home environment. And because at junior, actually they are below 18 years. The Constitution talks of below 18 years, you are a child. So where should these children also be praised? It is also good to give that environment where these children are learning at school and also having time with their parents and the learning again at the home level.
And
I
maybe you could be
what I can say because of my time.
Yes, you can wind up maybe within the minute.
Yes, thank you very much. As I wind up, I can say the last one. I said the extreme poverty in some of our households make it also an option that we all embrace the day schooling, especially for the junior secondary. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne and Mheshimiwa Sosion. I understand Honorable Sosion will be, he may leave early, and there are some questions for you, Honorable Mheshimiwa, before you leave. I will read from Daford Owino. He's a student.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're able to see the question, or can I read it for you, Mheshimiwa?
Just a minute. I need a notebook around myself.
Yes. So the first question to you, Mheshimiwa, is you once insinuated that boarding schools should cease to exist. How far is he with the matter now that he sits at the Parliamentary Education Committee? Then the second question to you is cultures are still retrogressive and early marriages are still practiced and FGM. You know, I think they want to know when, now that those things are not fully addressed, and you are talking of finishing boarding schools. That's from Francis Njuguna. And then the other one from Josephat and Zuve is, given that some areas lack nearby schools, while most schools in the interior of Kenya lack proper infrastructure, isn't deboarding going to disadvantage the bright students from these areas while favoring the rich, those near the already established school? That is also to you, Mheshimiwa. And boarding school is a lie and regard to educating children. I think that's just a comment. And then Bernard Makato, when we deboard our schools, are we not eliminating exposure of learners in terms of promoting national cohesion and tolerance? So those are the 4 questions. Over to you, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, thank you. These are wonderful questions worth thinking through. Number one, boarding schools should cease to exist. Yes, indeed. If we are talking about equity, we must remove all barriers. We cannot have categorization of schools that favor those who can afford, because boarding schools basically is purely for those who can afford or those who can get scholarships. But as you can see from statistics, 70% of the learners in Kenya in secondary schools are day scholars, 95% in primary are day scholars. And there is a trend in national exams, which is an indicator that students from day schools are beginning to top and do well in national examinations, therefore demystifying the need of boarding schools. So I think, as for me, they really should cease to exist. If you go to the US, boarding schools exist only as remand for approved learners who can fit, children who can fit in society. So I think in terms of giving special attention to the children, we must ensure where children are born, schools, quality schools are available for all children. It is expressively now provided in our constitution and laws that education is a right to every child. So it must be brought closer to the homestead where children are domiciled. Children are domiciled in their homes, in their clans, in their way of life, even in nomadism. And therefore we should bring education and schools to them rather than taking children far away to boarding schools. How much can we sustain to build boarding schools for millions and millions of children who are being born in this country? Even with change of governance and devolution and devolving resources, we should even think transport system of learners. Parents should stop buying school buses, and school buses should be provided by the local government. We must adopt the best practices that have been engaged by other civilizations, particularly governments in the north. We still have cultures that are still retrogressive, including female genital mutilation. These ones have been fought through legislation. I sit in the National Assembly, and I know we've passed a legislation on anti-FGM. Any person practicing FGM anywhere within the boundaries of the Republic of Kenya is a criminal and is liable to jail. So as a country, we must make the best laws to protect children wherever they are born. A child can be born anywhere in Kenya, and it doesn't matter the location. That child must be protected by the state and the laws, and protected against cultural practices that are very inhibitory, including female genital mutilation. So you cannot take away children to hide them in boarding schools, thinking that you are making them any safe from these practices. We must uproot these practices within our society using the legislation. We have parliament as an institution to make laws, and we have implementing authority execute those and creation of boarding schools.
We are losing you
in other counties, in marginalized counties, those in marginalized counties. My thoughts are, if we are talking about equity for all children, whether counties are marginalized or not marginalized, there must be mechanism, because when you eliminate boarding, it means you avail quality day school. That is a language, the other side of the language, that we must avoid avail quality day schools close to where learners are living. And this must be availed everywhere. I'm sure all counties are receiving government funding. And Kenya as a country, I'm so proud through the campaign that teachers have made. Kenya is one country that is investing over 6.5% of the GDP in education. One area is that of infrastructure. Instead of channeling funding to build dormitories and other boarding facilities, we should channel resources to avail quality classrooms, quality laboratories, and other basic necessary infrastructure everywhere in the Republic. There is nothing like a marginalized area and non-marginalized. Where children are found, schools must be availed. And then finally, the thought that a boarding school is for exposure and national cohesion is, I think, is a primitive thinking. It's no longer modern. We are thinking about the global agenda for education, and goal number 7 is global citizenship. We can teach global citizenship wherever any child is born, and we want global citizenship as an objective to be achieved by every learner. You can act locally, but think globally with technology and with new ways of learning. So this business of thinking that when learners get to boarding, they get to mix with the rest, what of those who are unable to access boarding? For example, we are talking about 70% of our learners in secondary school. So we can act locally and still think globally and open up the minds of our children within their locality to travel around the world and even through the universe. So really, you don't need to be moved physically to another community to appreciate another community. Through learning in situ, we can still achieve all this. So I think it is time we move pragmatically and deboard our country so that we can open up equity and access while emphasizing quality of education in every learning institution at the local level. This is a very exciting debate. I'm sure it is not ending here. And we urge Kenyans to open up and debate. It is time parents regained ownership of their children on a daily basis, and schools moved back to offer education on the basis of day. And learners can strengthen and build their values through parental guidance, at least before age 18, through these pragmatic reforms.
Thank you, Mr. Honorable Sosion, for your comments. And there are many people, there are many comments on the chat. People are saying they really support deboarding. There are also quite a lot of people are in support. I have learned a lot about the genesis of boarding schools from Honorable Sosion. Some feel boarding schools should exist for, in ASAL areas or for children with disabilities. And yeah, so there are a lot of comments which you can be reading. Now, I want to turn to our panelists. We've had the stage set, and I want to first ask Mr. Mayo. A lot has been said about parents. Let's hear from parents what you think, and we want to limit your discussion to just 3 minutes. Please, I will interrupt you after 3 minutes. And the reason I will do that is because we want to open the discussion to the people who are here, and they will be asking you questions direct. So your reflection on what we've shared so far. Mr. Mayo, please, 3 minutes maximum. Lucy and Margaret. So Mayo, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to give my comments as a chair of parents of this country. We are slightly over 10 million parents, and I'm not saying they're divided. Most of them I've spoken to are really for deboarding. And the reasons they're giving is, one, boarding schools are expensive to parents as compared to day schools. This is due to extra levies, boarding schools to facilitate boarding facilities and resources. Number two, day schools give parents an opportunity to monitor their children and impact them with appropriate values to assist them grow in an upright manner. Number three is that deboarding can increase the amount of time children spend with their parents, interact with the society, and thus learn vital values and skills like family, communal coexistence, which are of essential towards building a stable society with proper family values. Number four is that deboarding can increase the level of access to schools among learners. This is because children will be able to attend to local schools that they can easily access within the capacity of their parents. Number five is most of the negative habits like drug and substance abuse, homosexuality, lesbianism are acquired by learners or our children in boarding schools. Therefore, deboarding can assist in reducing exposure of children to such vices. Number six is, as most of the schools subjected to school unrest. Remember, there was a task force by Dr. Olwach, and the school unrest actually and violence are almost in only boarding schools. And this increased the level of stress to our children. And while at the facility, the stress that our children have will affect their quality of education. Number seven is that a good proportion of schools in Kenya, that's almost 70%, are day schools. That is for secondary schools. And they have, over the years, been able to uphold high standards with regard to discipline and educational competence among the learners. So I think my final comment is that actually deboarding, according to us, is a great idea whose time has come, and we support it as parents of this country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've heard from a representation of 10 million teachers, parents in this country. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayo. Now, I want now to invite Margaret Nyaga, who's representing Augusta. And you have over 8,000 schools. I want you to sort of comment on the implication of deboarding and the issue of values that everyone is talking about. Anne Gashoya talked about values under CBC. That's what it's all about. Mr. Mayo, Mheshimiwa Sosion, you know, about values. So maybe I welcome you. You have 3 minutes to look at what's being said about deboarding. Karibu, Margaret.
Thank you very much. I say good morning to everyone. I'm happy to be representing.
We can't hear you, Margaret. Unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Sorry for that. I am saying good morning to everyone, and I am happy to be here on behalf of Augusta Muthigani, the National Executive Secretary, to the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, the Commission for Education and Religious Education. The first item Dr. Joyce has asked me to comment on is the 8,000 plus number of schools. Quite a number of them are boarding, yes. And as for the boarding, we are saying yes, we are ready for that. And as usual, once this has been agreed on, the church is ready to come up with policies and strategies on how to make use of the excess facilities that will be there in the boarding schools. And we are sure that we will make good use of those facilities to expand the opportunities for more learners to join the schools. Then on the values, let me just say that we are seeing the day school as offering a greater opportunity for a number of things. One of them is holistic formation to the learners, which includes the physical, the spiritual, the cultural, social, character formation, and therefore thus the whole child growth and development. We see day schooling as providing a better opportunity for the integration of the learners, what they learn in school and what they learn and do at home, especially in the era of CBC, which is integrating the school learning with the community, environment, and everything else, the home. We want to reiterate the fact that the church is very strong on the role of the parents as the primary caregiver and educator of their children. Thus, they do the nurturing, the safeguarding, the guiding, the mentoring, or on lifelong issues. So with the day schooling, there is a greater opportunity for the parent to follow up on the growth of their child. And therefore, in the areas of school learning, character building, and also building on the competencies that they are learning at school. And we have seen this in reality. We have documented it in that KCCB has several values and living skills educational programs, which focus on the whole school community, the parents, the neighbors, and the community members. Such programs, as one of them, we call it Watoto Watunzwe na Walindwe. And another one is a parenting skills program. And another one is activity-based environmental education program. And all these engage parents and the community, as well as the school, the in-school community. We have found this programs working very effectively and with the impact when they are implemented in day schools, because parents are available when scheduled to come for the meetings. While for boarding schools, only the parents of the children that come from around the school are able to participate in such awareness raising meetings. So that is one of the strong reasons why deboarding for us would be the thing to go. We also have the integration of the learner with the community life and the culture that has already been alluded to. And in day schools, we see them learning to do things by themselves, taking care of themselves. They grow in resilience. They appreciate the hard work of their parents, and they are able to do some of that work, of course, so long as it is not child labor. Now, we were looking at how ready we are, and if we are, and we were saying that for access, this is an opportunity for the 100% transition, because there will be no boarding fees. For equity, we observe that there is infrastructure imbalance at the moment. The TSC engages some teachers in the better off schools, especially the boarding schools. And that goes also for the material resources. Now, our strong recommendation is that the Kenyans, through the government, through the parliament, through the all arms, we ensure that the teachers are equitably distributed. More schools and classrooms are put in place, especially to address the distances. Distances, because we have found that many children are getting into trouble to and from school as they walk along, some of them long distances. So that has to be taken care of.
You need to wind up now, Margaret.
Yes, I am winding up with the statement that I just started on. Adequate learning resources to all the schools, equitably distributed, and a more robust parental empowerment and engagement program to ensure that parents who may not be available for children for the evenings and weekends and holidays, they find good reason to be available to accompany and mentor their children along the way as they grow and develop. Thank you.
So thank you, Margaret, to learn that you are ready for deboarding. Now, the last panelist is Dr. Lucy Wakiaga. She has a lot of experience in international education. And please take 3 minutes and tell us the experience of other places so that we get to know, is it that we are thinking in a funny way, or has it been done elsewhere? So kindly just take 3 minutes, because we'll have an opportunity to discuss things further during Q&A. So Lucy, Dr. Lucy Wakiaga.
Thank you so much, Joyce. This has been quite an enlightening and enriching conversation. School, but when I see the way boarding school has morphed, especially very hesitant.
Lucy.
Yes, can you hear me?
Your internet is breaking a lot. So do you want to remove the video maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, it's hanging.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I was just saying that Thank you for the interesting discussion. Personally, I'm a product of boarding school in high school. And when I see where boarding school is today in this country, I would be very hesitant to have my child go to boarding school. And Mr. Sosion earlier on in his keynote was actually talking about the way boarding schools have become very commercialized, and unfortunately that is what the reality is. And even given the statistics that have been provided by the panelists and the guest speakers, we have a larger majority of our learners actually in day schools compared to boarding schools. And then also looking at the historical reasons why boarding schools were set up, really, it's about time that we start to look at things a little differently. Now, with my international experience, as the conversation has also alluded to, there is a huge setup in terms of having public schools, day schools, and you find a lot of investments being done in day schools. With boarding schools being, like in the US, for example, the boarding schools tend to be private, and then they are very expensive. So there are only a few who would take their children actually to boarding schools, and just for particular reasons. Now, for me, I would like to shift the conversation just slightly a bit, because a lot has been said in terms of, why we need to shift away from boarding schools. And for me, I would look at how do we then effectively fund public schools? Because Mr. Sosion talked about, okay, as we talk about the other side of the axis is quality day schools for our learners. And I think this is where we have to look at our communities and the schools that exist within our communities. For me, I'm a product of public school through and through, whether it is primary, high school, even university. I've been in public all through. Now, when you look at our local public schools, in terms of how they are resourced, in terms of the quality of education that is provided, do communities feel that this is the kind of education that they would want to give their children? You find that there's this push and pull, and parents are not satisfied with their local schools. That's why we find a lot of mushrooming of private schools. And then these private schools, you find parents go across the town to look for education for their children. So you find children waking up as early as 4, as 5 a.m. because they have to catch the school bus to take them to the other side of town. So there's really need to focus for the communities to play a more active role. Whichever neighborhood that we find ourselves in, how do we gather the resources in those neighborhoods to be able to equip our schools? For example, somebody like me who lives in Langata, how can I equip Uhuru Gardens primary so that my child feels comfortable to be able to go to that? So then it calls on the role of the local government to make sure that the funding sources are properly structured, so that there can be enough resourcing and enough funding. And even if more public schools have to be provided, then more public schools can then be built. So then also looks into the issues of how funding sources, what are the different mechanisms for generating funds? One of them is, of course, the taxes. A place like the US, for example, property taxes are the ones that are used to fund schools. But then besides that, there is collaboration with the private sector. So then we have to look at our local communities and look into the issues of public-private partnerships. How can there be more collaboration between these two arms so that there can be enough funding for the schools? And then in addition to that, Just this last piece, I know Joyce, you said you wanted to open up the discussion, is to look at how do we effectively engage the parents. I think the parents are disconnected with their local schools because they see their taxes that they are paying, but these taxes do not go to effectively resource their neighborhood schools. So this is kind of like double taxing because you pay your local taxes, even though we might not be paying them directly, but then you have to take your child across town to go and pay private school. So we really have to have a paradigm shift. So there has to be more involvement of parents in the local communities. And for me, this is where I feel Mr. Mayo and his team really have a huge role to play in terms of empowering parents. And I was glad to hear Margaret say the KCCB programs that are actually in place to empower the parents. So we need to see more traction of these kinds of activities in the public schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wakiaga. I just want to read a few comments here that are on the chat. I support Mheshimiwa 100%. Boarding schools need to go. Great insights, Honorable. Time to deboard is now. Hesh, that was really good delivery. I think he's responded to questions. Hannah Bula, I'm in support of deboarding. Parents need to be part and parcel of children holistic development. This is Dr. Bula from Kenyatta University. Then we have Saitoti Wainaina also saying he's learned a lot, but it's a good policy, but issues of infrastructure coming up. Then we also have Sainaida, I hope who has a passion for children. Then we have Dennis Moge, and for him, how children, he wants to know how it will work for children with disabilities or special schools. I think we had tackled Owino's question. Then we have Joseph, who is also in support for deboarding because of, he's saying boarding schools are used to hold students in custody and under unbearable conditions, and on and on and on. Most people are in support. Thomas is also in support. I want to read a comment here, all the way from Botswana. And she says that they're excited to hear that all parties and relevant stakeholders are on board. So they want to know whether these schools are available in villages, but they are very excited to hear, deboarding from Botswana. And I want to open this discussion. Kindly say if you've not already put it in the chat. If you have, you don't have to say it. We'll read it. Now, I want to open it up. Please say your name. Don't explain, a lot of context and your question and who you are addressing that question to. So the session is open to anyone. So you can raise your hand, and then after that, I'll be coming in. Dion will be coming in also with the relevant question once an issue is raised, and to the relevant people, and keep putting your questions on the Q&A section. Karibu, it's open now to members. You can unmute and talk. Thank you.
We'll have to admit them as panelists. So I see 3 people. Usman, can you just help me admit these people?
We can just allow them to talk.
Yes. Okay.
Which
okay.
I have. So Kelvin, Rapa, and.
So we have Kelvin.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for admitting me. Now, I'm delighted to be part of this conversation, but I realize that everyone is talking of boarding schools from the point of view of family values, impacting, offering the children and the parents an opportunity engage so that the children are given the family, the social values. But then I have a comment, and I would want one of the panelists to speak to it, that I don't really think that abolishing the boarding schools would really, entrench the question of equity, which is a key issue in our education system. Now, my main concern is I realized that the introduction of boarding schools in Kenya, if you look at sessional paper number 1 of 2005, the proposal was that the government was to collaborate with stakeholders to establish and improve boarding schools in areas of ASAL, that is the arid and semi-arid areas. But now, what can we do as a country so that the issue of equity is entrenched even as we plan to abolish boarding schools? I've had an opportunity to go to areas like, Mandera.
Calvin,
Yes.
kindly keep it, just summarize. I think the issue you want to know is maybe in one sentence.
How do we ensure that equity is attained even as we abolish boarding schools, so that students from areas where the schools are dispersed can easily and comfortably access school as well?
Okay, thank you. And if Anne is here, would you want to address that? And then the next thing, Mr. Haga, there is a lot of question on disability and special schools. So maybe after Anne, you can comment the implication of deboarding. Are we also including schools with special needs that are scattered all over the country? So Anne, and then Mr. Haga, Director Haga, kindly respond to special needs school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Even for the question that has been put forth, the advocates of deboarding are not only talking about deboarding from the social aspect point of view. It is not only because of the values. We have noted there are far many advantages in the 21st century where deboarding provide opportunity to enhance that equity and inclusion of learners. So from 2003, the government has been expanding infrastructure facilities to areas, specifically with a focus to those areas in ASO regions. And that is an issue of equity. So you also look at the cost. You find that the boarding schools are more costly when you compare them with the day schools. And when they are expensive, it means some children from those poor households are not able to access education. When you make education affordable, it means you enhance equity. You enhance that provision. You make it possible for them to access the education. So indeed, what we also said is that special consideration will also be made because there are also those environmental factors, like what you have just pointed out. We also have children living with the severe disabilities. And all those fall under special category where policy measures will be put to ensure that they don't miss out on education and they all benefit from quality, inclusive education for all. So the policy makers are alive to that and efforts are being made. Dr. Joyce will also allow me 1 minute to comment on something that had earlier been asked. In the task force report, one of the recommendations is actually to develop school policy. And I want to assure the panel, the participants, that the ministry is going to initiate the development of school transport policy come financial year tomorrow, that is 2021-2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Dion, who's next? And maybe I can read one comment here. Dennis is wondering, when schools close, parents really complain. They want the children to school, you know, to go back to school. So maybe, and also Hannah thinks it should be gradual deboarding. And Caroline is also looking at infrastructure. I think talking about infrastructure. Yeah, so the next person.
So Joyce, we have Rabasa Onyango.
Okay, please keep your...
Joyce, yes. Did you want me to speak immediately after Anne? Or
yes, I'm so sorry, I forgot. Yes, yes, Mr. Haga. On,
thank you.
Deboarding, does it cover schools with special needs?
Thank you very much, Joyce, and a very intriguing discussion indeed. I note the few questions that are specific to learners with disability, and the questions are really in context, because special schools, many special schools in this country, right from primary school level up to secondary, are actually boarding schools. The question we need to ask is, why do these children go to boarding school? And they do go to these schools because the human resource, that is the teachers, the facilities, the environment, are not available in the schools in their neighborhood. So as a country, we seem to have decided where we want to go, and therefore it's for the country now to work on how to get there. The sector policy for learners and trainees with disabilities of 2018 is big on inclusion in the provision of education services. And it proposes that all schools should be made accessible, because the next step would be ensuring that the appropriate teaching force is available in those schools. So while we may not be able to do that right away, eventually, I believe this country will reach a point where most of the schools, most of the regular schools in the neighborhood of children are able to accommodate children with disabilities. But before that happens, and I do know that the Ministry of Education is just not going to wake up one day and say, from today, we no longer have boarding schools. There are unique cases, special cases, that will still require boarding schools until it reaches such a time when there are specific needs, the needs why they go to boarding schools, like children with disabilities. I think this, we do support even for children with disabilities. And I may also mention that 2 counties in this country, that is Kisumu, especially the urban area of Kisumu, and Mombasa, are already working on transport arrangements for learners with special needs. And that will facilitate their movement to the extent that even if they were to be day scholars, then, like Anne says, that transport policy, school transport policy, will just go into support what's already happening. The examples are Mombasa and Kisumu. Thank you.
Thank you, Haga. Dion, who's next? Kindly just say, ask your question.
So we have
don't give a lot of context.
Okay, so we have Rabasa Onyango. Rabasa, kindly unmute. You've been allowed to speak. Then after Rabasa, we have Jackton Ogeno. And then I think we'll take the last person. After Jackton, we're going to have Thomas Ogendo, and that's, I think we'll just take that.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, Rabasa.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think my perception of boarding school changed after the COVID-19 school closure. When schools closed for some time and the children were at home for more than almost 7 months, we realized that there were so many child pregnancies and also some boys turned delinquent. My view, the issue of child protection and safeguarding is the responsibility of the community. That is why I believe that it is not necessary to have boarding schools, because we could be offering an education or giving an education environment that does not favor the growing up of children. Let children grow up in their communities. Let them grow up within their own cultural contexts, so that the parents and the communities take control of the children's growth. Because having children who cannot have values because of boarding schools means that it beats the logic of school, actually. That is all I wanted to comment.
Okay, thank you, Rabasa. I think it was more of comments on his reflection when schools closed and the role of boarding schools. Now, Thomas.
Okay, thank you so much. I really love the conversation, and starting from commending the honorable member, that is Wilson Sosion. He started by narrating to us the history concerning the development process of boarding institutions in this country. But now, as a concerned Kenyan, what will be the position of improvement in diversity in matters where we want to clearly implement a system that promotes legalization?
Hello, sorry to interrupt you, Thomas. Can you speak louder?
Okay, thank you. I'm saying my question is concerning the interest of Kenyans who are really working towards improvement in diversity. Then another issue, I served as the national president of the Student Council, and during my election, there was an ongoing debate of deboarding of our institution. How is government prepared to convince our parents that we can improve the quality of education in our local areas that will help us kind of improve the status of education in the lives of our students? Then, basing on the values that have been mentioned, what is the best approach towards educating our parents on the values entitled with our students in day schools, as it has been reported that most of the affected schools in matters school unrest, indiscipline, homosexuality, and all other negative vices are mostly reported in our boarding institution. So my comment is that it's a good debate that we need to kind of indulge as a nation and give it the best approach in the way we handle it. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I think he's asked a question which I would want Mr. Mayo maybe to answer. He wants to know the best approach in helping parents or to prepare parents. It's a discussion, we are here talking, but what about the many parents? Maybe Mr. Mayo, you can comment on how best to work with the parents so that this idea is also acceptable to them. Mr. Mayo?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's what was very good is when issues come, they tend to differ from section to section. But the best way we can handle any issue coming up, like now deboarding, is we have representatives in every class. The 3,000 schools we have in Kenya, that is 10,204 for secondary schools, and 23,000 primary schools. In each class, we have a class rep. And where I sit as a national chair, we converse with them through WhatsApp. Like before I came for this meeting, for this conversation, I shared with them also in the sub-counties, and some few, about almost 17 of them in the schools. Because every school we have a school chair of PA. And most of them were saying what actually summarized. I know during the pandemic, the 10 months we had so many challenges with our children. And that was an eye-opener for us. That by the society, that is the best actually. Let each child come up, let be in Murang'a, where I come from, and be brought up there by the community. So we will reach out for them through WhatsApp groups. We'll reach out to them through Zoom meetings, the way we've been doing. We'll reach out to them through media houses and discussions through the radio conversations we've been having. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As our time comes to an end, maybe I can read a few. There was a question from Mary Sichangi, and also wanting to know how parents will be mobilized. And I think Mr. Mayo has answered that. Others are, thank you, Winfred, for your comment on deboarding makes sense. Virginia Gindiru on parental involvement in this conversation is critical. So again, how do we continue this discussion? We are hardly 100, and but we need, more discussions. And also Tom Onchari, he's also supporting and deboarding, and specifically he wants to thank faith-based organizations like Catholic for supporting education, and also the fact that they are also in support for deboarding. And I think for me, even as I want to welcome John Mugo to make his final remarks. Is John here? Is Dr. John Mugo?
I don't see him.
Okay, that's okay. So I think for me, what I can summarize, looking at your questions and comments, is many people agree on deboarding, and but there are issues. There is the special schools that will need consideration. There's issue of transport, issue of infrastructure. In fact, one person had commented for the national schools, they will not be utilized well, if you've been reading the comments. And even as we wind up, I want to request Anne to give the closing, an overview of everything, and then give the meeting over to Dion, who will close for us. So Anne Gashoya, you can give your closing remarks, and then Dion can wind up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce, and everyone else for participating in this important discussion, where it's a conversation on some of the key policies that are likely to be done and affect each one of us. It was on deboarding, and as Dr. Ali has said, it is almost generally acceptable that it is time for deboarding. Someone even said it is long overdue. However, there are those issues that need also to be taken into consideration no one will actually just wake up and then say, from tomorrow, it is like this. The policy directions, the regulations, the frameworks must first be put in place. One of the recommendations, even in the task force report, which is also in the session of paper number 1 of 2019, is to develop a framework for the junior secondary. How do you, the junior secondary, how, where will they be? How? The question of what and how. So all that is in the, I think that is some of the things that need to be looked into before even it is termed as a policy direction and all that, because we all need to look at all the pros and the cons, and they do the very best for the children of this country. So it is indeed those issues highlighted are there, those environmental factors, the country itself, the development is not the same. So we need to look at all those issues of infrastructure, the issues of how these children are going to reach the school, the safety and all that, in order to enable them continue learning. This discussion is indeed timely, and we have really learned a lot from one another. And I just pray that Dr. Joyce and team will continue holding many more forums, because it is from the contributions that I was seeing in the chat that also help when we come to making those policy decisions. Even when we shall be formulating those frameworks, we shall be referring to some of the comments that are coming in the chat, because they are very key and very relevant to this process. So thank you very much. As we wait for the government direction or not this, we are part of this country. It is our time, and God has given us opportunity to be there and even to be thinking how this should be. So let us continue giving our ideas. Let's continue giving our contributions, our input. Those who are doing researches, you do researches and they provide the ministry with given data, with information, and this will really be helpful moving forward. So thank you once again, the organizers of this forum, the participants of this forum, and each one of you. Those are my closing remarks. I'm indeed happy to have this opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Mr. Haga, I don't want to close you out. Maybe you can give your final shot, then Dion can come in. Mr. Haga?
Thank you very much, Joyce. I think if we recall the statement made by the cabinet secretary when he was announcing the Form 1 placement, he made reference to the issue of Kenyans' love for specific schools, considered high-performing schools. You realize that he was trying to disabuse the country of that irrational preference for certain schools in this country. And he pointed out that good performance can be realized in different schools. And I think there was evidence to that extent. And that is, and that he was saying that because I think in Kenya we have sort of joined the issue of boarding and academic performance, such that by the time we are looking at a school, we are looking at the whole school, including the boarding facilities. And that used to be the case even in higher education in this country, until maybe the late 90s, when the issue of bed capacity was delinked from maybe admission at the high school, at the higher education level. I think the discussion we've had today is really timely and helped in preparing the country in terms of that move towards deboarding. Like I earlier said, you can see that many stakeholders feel that it is time to embrace deboarding. And I believe the Ministry of Education will handle that process systematically, so that like I said, it's not just something that you switch on and off, but the necessary infrastructure needs to be undertaken, and that will go a long way in promoting the 100 transition policy of the ministry. Remember, a few years ago, people used to miss schools. The learners used to miss chances in secondary school. But with 100% transition, all learners are now going to Form 1 when they finish. So it is very timely, and I believe the Ministry of Education is going to make sure that all learners who are transiting from primary are able to be placed in day schools or whatever school that is closest to them. That is, if we are talking about day schools, closest to them, so that it doesn't pose any challenge. Just want to thank the organizers today of bringing up this very important discussion, and the feeling that you get when we listen to the discussion about today is that people actually are positive about the idea. Thank you very much, Joyce.
Okay, thank you, Haga. Over to you, Dion, to close for us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Joyce, and thank you all panelists and all participants. You've made this discussion a success today. Just to highlight that we have not been able to answer all your questions. I see some hands are still raised. We have Dennis M, Tom Onchari, Jackton, but this is the first dialogue in this series that we're planning to have. So we will be sending out invitations every month. We'll be having this dialogue on a monthly basis. So Karibu, we invite you to participate. We also ask that you send in your questions. You can email them to me. My email address is doguna@pearlnetwork.org. But if you've not been able to catch that right now, just go to the email that was sent to you when you registered. Any question that you have, please send them to me. We also plan to issue certificates of participation. So if anybody, if anyone wants a certificate, please do write me an email, register your name with me, and we will send the certificates. I also noticed that somebody said we are less than 100 today. Okay, and we are trying to have this discussion. This is also just to let you know that we plan to expand the dialogues besides just having the webinars. We do hope that we can have these dialogues on TV stations and radio stations. And at some point, you are the stakeholders we've been inviting. We may reach out to you to, to come and give your opinion. So it's going to be more than 100 at the end of the day, hopefully. So thank you so much for participating today. And we look forward to seeing you and engaging more with you. Asanteni sana.
So have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.